Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Global Eye. I'm Shereen Bhan. UK voters have turned in their verdict. The Labour Party storming back to power after securing a landslide victory, winning over 400 seats. 61-year-old Keir Starmer is UK's next Prime Minister. The Labour Party's majority is the highest that we've seen in close to 200 years, bringing an end to 14 years of Conservative rule, which has seen 5 Prime Ministers, including 4 in just the last 5 years. The Conservative Party has seen its worst poll drubbing. About a dozen cabinet ministers have lost their seat. Liz Truss becomes the first former Prime Minister in almost 19 years to lose her seat at a general election. Rishi Sunak stepping down as Prime Minister after his party's disastrous poll outing. He called Starmer a decent, public-spirited man. Addressing a sea of red during his victory speech, Starmer reiterated his party's election tagline, "Change begins now." He's vowed national renewal and putting the country first and the party second.
You campaigned for it, you fought for it, you voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now. And it feels good, I have to be honest. 4.5 years of work changing the party. This is what it is for. A changed Labour Party, ready to serve our country, ready to restore Britain to the service of working people.
We had been expecting defeat for the Conservatives in this election, then expecting crushing defeat, then a Labour landslide. What we are witnessing is really a political bloodbath where the Conservatives stand decimated politically. Labour will form government now with an overwhelming majority, with Sir Keir Starmer as the new Prime Minister of Britain. Rishi Sunak has conceded defeat. How could he not? And he's congratulated Labour on their massive win, congratulated Starmer. But Rishi Sunak is now done for. He will have to quit as leader of the Conservative Party. The Tories are very unforgiving of leaders who lead the party to defeat, and then a defeat such as this. Rishi Sunak's high-flying political career really is over. He will at best now be a backbench opposition MP. A very large number of top Conservatives have lost their seats, not forgetting the many who chose not to contest at all, seeing this coming. But over now to Starmer. Starmer has been an effective and innovative administrator with extensive experience in running institutions that Sunak did not quite have. The biggest challenge, of course, will be to steady the economy and to improve the economy, get growth. It won't be easy. Growth has been elusive. He'll have to contain inflation, manage the tax burden. The ask is huge, but the British have decided that they will now rely on Starmer and his team for the job.
Sanjay Suri reporting there from London. A Labour Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street after 14 years. What are the implications that it will have on Indo-UK ties? Joining me now, Richard Heald, Executive Chair of the UK-India Business Council. Navtej Sarna, the former Indian Ambassador to the UK, also with us. And Nigel Fletcher, Political Historian at King's College London, joins us as well. And we'll shortly be joined by Rami Ranger. He will be with us on the programme. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the programme. Nigel Fletcher, to you. As Sanjay Suri was pointing out, defeat was what people had factored in, but a landslide for Labour seemed to be what the exit polls predicted, and it's gone exactly as per the script. What do you think Labour has done right, or how much would you attribute anti-incumbency? 14 years of the Conservatives, how much would you attribute anti-incumbency for the kind of victory that we've seen for Keir Starmer and Labour?
Well, I think that is a significant part of it, for 2 reasons, really. If you look at the poll share that Starmer and Labour have achieved, the vote share that they've received, it's actually rather lower than some other leaders have got, and achieved nothing like this sort of outcome. The thing that has given them this enormous landslide majority is that the Conservative vote share has completely collapse. They have lost votes to the Reform UK party on the one side, and they've lost votes to Labour and to the Liberal Democrats on the other side. If you look at the last comparable landslide defeat in 1997, the Conservatives in that election ended up on about 30 points. In this election, they're hovering around 20. I don't know what the final figure is, but they're significantly down below that. So it is quite clear that it's that Conservative collapse that has driven this extraordinary result on what's not actually a particularly large Labour share of the vote.
Well, you know, you're right in pointing that out, Nigel Fletcher. And in fact, I'm looking at data that's been put together by Tom Calver at the Sunday Times. And he says we have a Labour landslide, yet at the constituency level, seats are tighter than any point since 1945. So highlighting some of what we just heard there from you. But Richard Heald, great to have you back on the Global Eye. Let me start by asking you what this means as far as the UK is concerned. You know, we heard Keir Starmer there saying that this is a vote for change, that it is not just a vote for change, but it's also Labour that has changed and will deliver on the change for the UK. We've seen a very detailed, turnaround plan, but also perhaps a realistic turnaround plan that Keir Starmer and team have put together as part of the manifesto, steadying the UK economy, bringing growth back, keeping inflation in check. I mean, these are not easy task, Richard Heald. He takes on a pretty arduous road.
Yes, absolutely, Shereen. I think his inbox is going to be quite full, and it's not going to be actually that much different from the inbox that Rishi Sunak had in relation to the points that you mentioned. That having been said, we are starting to see green shoots in the economy here in the UK. Inflation is coming down. We're expecting interest rates to decline. So there are positives. All politicians have to be lucky, and it would appear that he's arriving on the scene here with this huge majority at a time when the economy is moving in the right direction. That having been said, yes, his challenges are immense, and he came out with a very ambitious and aggressive manifesto. And the clear thing that he is looking for is management for growth. That is his thrust that he's been talking about. The key thing that we are waiting to see is how he intends to pay for these, how he intends to actually stimulate the economy in ways that he's described.
Yes, and I'll get to that in just a second and highlight some of the points mentioned in the manifesto that Keir Starmer and Labour will take forward. But Navtej Sarna, let me bring you into the conversation. Appreciate you joining us. What we are seeing across the world today is challenges for the incumbents. We've seen it play out here in the UK. We're seeing it play out in France. And of course, over the weekend, we will see how France votes in the second round of the elections as well. What do you pick up on this mood of anti-incumbency that seems to be weighing on the mind of voters globally, Navtej Sarna?
Well, thank you, Shereen. I think anti-incumbency is a major factor. I'm not sure you can draw parallels across countries and the reasoning in each case, but certainly it plays into this. And here, I think anti-incumbency, as has been said by the previous speakers, has been a major factor. It's not so much a sudden rise in Labour popularity as a complete collapse in confidence in the Conservatives and what they have done over 14 years. These 14 years have been filled with not just Brexit, on which there's always been a divided opinion, but a handling of the pandemic, scandals through the pandemic, a very, very sluggish economy, low growth, and some really, really strategic missteps, if I may call them that, things like the Rwanda plan, etc. So I think in the public eye, these have all added up to a situation where, given the fact that your public services are collapsing on top of all this, it's shown that nobody's in charge or nobody knows what's happening. So here, I think probably the anti-incumbency factor has been the most obvious in the UK. In France, you also have a more ideological divide, which you are seeing play out. So while many countries are voting to the right, the UK has voted towards the left.
That's right. Well, that is right. The UK has voted to the left, and Navtej Sarna, you make important points there about some of the missteps that could have perhaps led to the Conservative debacle. Rami Ranger also with us. Appreciate you joining us, Lord Ranger. Wanted to understand from you what you make of Keir Starmer and the Labour's victory, but more importantly, now let's talk about the road ahead. The UK is also known to make its transition from the incumbent to the next government fairly swiftly. In fact, The Economist has said that you get barely a few hours to move things out of 10 Downing Street, and we can already see Keir Starmer there at 10 Downing Street. So what would your expectations really be on government formation from here on?
I think the Labour Party has changed a lot since the last Labour Party was in government. They left a very big black hole. Managing economy is not very popular these days. People want something for nothing. Rishi Sunak is a very intelligent gentleman. He brought the economy under control after Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, crashed the economy with all these false promises, cutting taxes, borrowing money. So being a banker, he knows how important it is to keep the inflation low. So sometimes, when you sacrifice, you want to make sure the economy grows, and you don't want to borrow a lot of money, and you want to manage your social services, because social services, people are living longer. National health is under immense pressure because the drugs are not cheap these days. So all these things make the incumbent government very unpopular because they've been in power for 14 years. It's a record, and people think that the Labour Party will have a panacea. Let's change for the sake of changing. But again, it will be a very daunting task for Labour Party to manage the economy with the war in Ukraine, energy crisis, cost of living crisis, Brexit effects of the Brexit, and then we had COVID. We are just recovering from COVID pandemic, and therefore it is a very unfortunate that Rishi Sunak was at this time to take the flak. But he managed the economy, inflation is down, interest rates are coming down, unemployment is very manageable. There's not much. So he did a wonderful job in the 18 months he was Prime Minister. But again, people want change for the sake of change. That, let's try Labour Party, what will they do? But I don't think they have a magic wand that they can, suddenly turn the economy around, because we are affected by the global situation.
Sure.
So that is the situation.
No, absolutely, and I think Keir Starmer acknowledges that there is no silver bullet, no magic wand. In fact, let's listen in to Keir Starmer addressing the media outside 10 Downing Street.
A better future, that we need to move forward together. Now, this wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. But we can make a start today with the simple acknowledgement that public service is a privilege, and that your government should treat every single person in this country with respect. If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country. But whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern. Country first, party second. Yet, if I'm honest, service is merely a precondition of hope, and it is surely clear to everyone that our country needs a bigger reset, a rediscovery of who we are, because no matter how fierce the storms of history, one of the great strengths of this nation has always been our ability to navigate a way to calmer waters. And yet this depends upon politicians particularly those who stand for stability and moderation, as I do, recognising when we must change course. For too long now, we've turned a blind eye as millions slid into greater insecurity. Nurses, builders, drivers, carers, people doing the right thing.
Well, that is Keir Starmer. They're talking about a reset, acknowledging the fact that it's not going to be easy, but also promising, as the manifesto did, stability and moderation to ensure that the UK steadies the ship and heads to calmer waters. Richard Heald, I want to come back to you now and talk about the economic reset that we perhaps could be looking at with Keir Starmer at the helm of affairs. You know, they've talked about building 1.5 million new homes. They've talked about 24 billion pounds as far as the new green initiatives are concerned. Stable tax policy is what is being promised at this point in time. No hike in income tax, etc. You know, what would it take to reset the economy, Richard Heald? What is industry looking forward to?
Well, I think you've summarised it quite well. I mean, there have been Keir Starmer and the Labour Party in their manifesto, as I said, have made a number of very key pledges. Some of which are interesting in terms of stability, in terms of tax. And how much does it cost to move the economy forward? It costs an awful lot. And that is, I think, one of the key questions at this moment in time. What does business want? Business wants sustainability. They want continuity in terms of applications of regulations and taxation. They want to have an operating environment which is conducive to getting returns that their shareholders and their owners want. That having been said, as one of your speakers, in fact, Lord Ranger, has just indicated, and I indicated earlier, the economy is turning. And whether it's turning, you know, as fast as we would all like or not is a question. But nonetheless, it is moving in the right direction. So that is a clear positive.
We are now heading. Yeah, that's a clear positive, and the disinflationary trend is something that we're witnessing across the US and the UK, as you point out as well. But Navtej Sarna, let's address the India-UK question. And, you know, ahead of the elections, the hope was that we would have tied together the UK-India FTA negotiations that started in January of 2022. 14 rounds have been held so far. What does a Keir Starmer victory mean for the larger India-UK relationship, and specifically for the India-UK FTA?
I think all indications are, and I base these indications on the visits by several shadow cabinet members, including the shadow foreign secretary and the likely foreign secretary David Lammy, that they would continue to push the India-UK relationship on the path that it has been set during the Tory years, including the upgrade to the comprehensive strategic partnership in 2021, and the sort of new enthusiasm, new push for the FTA. Obviously, the FTA has slowed down because both countries were going into elections, and now that we have both the governments back, or two governments back in power, I think now they will give it a push again. The sticking points will be what they are, you know, market access and mobility and migration and so on, and you know, intercompany transfers and tariffs on particularly important items. So all that will have to be negotiated, but I think the political push will be there because Labour has said that they're looking at a reset, not just towards Europe, but also towards Global South. And Global South will very much include the relationship with India. So I think the old sticking points, the old irritants with Labour and the government of India will probably be put away into on the back burner, or put away into cold storage, even better. And the focus will be on the positive aspects of the relationship.
And getting that FTA done. Nigel, Fletcher, I want to come back to you. As we just heard there from Keir Starmer, words clearly will not be enough. You know, the voter will need to see demonstrable action now. What do you believe we're going to see Keir Starmer prioritise? You know, there's been a list of deliverables as part of that manifesto, whether it's cutting down the NHS waiting time, scrapping the Rwanda scheme, setting up a publicly owned green energy firm, ending the VAT tax break on private schools, more neighbourhood police and so on and so forth. What do you believe Keir Starmer will prioritise in the first few days in office?
Well, I think he's in a very difficult position. As we've heard, the economic situation he's facing is not great. It may be improving, but he's left himself very little room for manoeuvre. And so he can't make very grand gestures of big policies that are going to cost a lot of money. And we've seen over the last sort of months and years him actually scaling down the promises that he's made. He had a huge green energy pledge that he has scrapped before he got to the election. So it's not about spending a huge amount of money. But what I thought was interesting about what he said on the steps of Downing Street just now was talking about trust and people's faith in politicians. And I think what we're going to see from him in the first days and weeks of his premiership is something very simple, which is to reassure people that there are standards of behaviour in government. He's somebody who is clearly a very serious person. In fact, even Rishi Sunak, in his words as he was leaving Downing Street, paid tribute to Keir Starmer as a man of honour, of integrity, and someone that he said he respected. And I think that's something that Starmer is going to want to be very clear about. We've seen many years of behaviour by Boris Johnson and by other ministers that have really tarnished the Conservative reputation because people think that they just haven't been behaving properly. And I think there's going to be a focus on standards of behaviour in public life. And that, above all else, I think is going to be the tone of what he wants to do, rather than sort of some grand pledges and grand spending that he doesn't have the money to do. I think it will be about the character of the government that he's going to try and convey.
Yes, and that will be important to see. But Navtej Sarna, I want to come back to you and talk about what this means as far as global issues are concerned, whether it is the war with Ukraine, dealing with Russia, etc. On foreign policy, do you believe that we're likely to see a continuation, a status quo from the Tories to Labour, or do you believe that we could see a different approach on some of these big global issues?
I think it depends upon the issues. There will be an attempted betterment of relations with Europe. Clearly, I think Labour is committed to having better relations, possibly a security and defence pact with the EU and with Germany and France. Of course, the problem is that there are problems in Europe, both the German and French leaders being on the back foot at the moment. On Ukraine, I think you will not find too much of a difference between what the UK stand has been. They will be committed to working with the United States as much as possible on Ukraine and on Russia. I think on Gaza, Keir Starmer would have a more difficult sort of ground to tread. Labour does rely a lot on, support of Palestine supporters, and therefore it will be a slightly more difficult circle to square for Labour, and let's see where they go. At the same time, he will be committed to keeping up support for Israel, and he will need to handle the protests and activism that from his own supporters that is likely to increase now that they are in power. I think with the United States, the traditional partners for Labour have been the Democrats, but now they have tried to keep open the lines with the Republicans, and it will depend upon what happens in the United States. At the same time, it's quite clear that, being a special relationship between US and UK, they would have to sink any differences that they might have and would need to work together.
Well, all of this, of course, is going to be work in play and work in progress. It's just the start of Keir Starmer's leadership. Lord Ranger, I'll give you the final say. You know, you were talking about Rishi Sunak's time in office. Where does this leave Rishi Sunak and the Tories? Many suggest that it will have to be a very quick regrouping to understand what has happened and how they recoup from what has been an absolute debacle. You know, how will the world remember Rishi Sunak and where does this leave things for him?
Well, Rishi Sunak has broken the glass ceiling. He has demonstrated that in the United Kingdom, it doesn't matter where you come from, where you wish to go. So he made a history being the first non-white prime minister. So his legacy is amazing. He took over the country when the country was in financial crisis. Inflation was running away. So therefore, he brought inflation under control. But having said that, Labour are going to be a very big disappointment for the voters because they expect Labour to turn the economy around overnight. It's not going to happen because we are connected with the world and world situation affects us. And the other thing is India, you asked about India-UK relationship. India under Prime Minister Modi has become the most lucrative market in the world. And the economy is growing very rapidly in India. It's a stable market. Everybody wants to do business with India. India is now the most attractive destination for investment. So I think all in all, Labour will prove to be a disappointment for the voters. They will not be able to, you know, it's very difficult because although you can promise things when the chips are down, the reality will dawn on you. And, you know, already Labour's record is they know how to spend money, but they don't know how to grow the economy. Now, social services cost an awful lot of money, but if you don't have friendly policy toward the business or the risk taker or entrepreneur, you are going to crash the economy once again. So therefore, I am very optimistic about the legacy of Rishi Sunak. His picture will be number 10 Downing Street with all the other good and the great Prime Minister. So he already made it.
That it certainly will be. That it certainly will be. Lord Ranger, Nigel, Fletcher, Ambassador Navtej Sarna, Richard Heald, appreciate you joining us. It is the start of Richard Starmer's stint at 10 Downing Street. It is not going to be an easy task to turn things around. Many challenges will need to be grappled with as he starts his term, but we will have to wait to see and, of course, report on those developments. But for now, here on the Global Eye, on a day that Keir Starmer has walked into 10 Downing Street, from all of us, goodbye and thanks for watching.